Hey everyone, this is Ronnie. Welcome back to the channel. I was going to do a how-to video today on how to swap out your stock handlebars. Maybe you're looking for some handlebars with a little more upright, a little more swept back riding position, a little more comfortable. And the first thing I was going to do was wrap the front of the bike in a blanket just to protect it. And this is my helper, and this is the blanket I was going to use. So I guess I'm going to need a different blanket. So here are the tools we're going to be using today. We've got a magnetic screwdriver, and I'll explain what that's used for a little later, of course. A small Phillips screwdriver. This is a metric set of wrenches. Great to have anytime you work on a bike. A good set like this that has pretty much every metric wrench you're going to need. Then I have a 5mm, a 4mm, and a 3mm individual metric wrench. These are just great because these are pretty much the three most common metric wrenches that you're going to use. And with long handles like this, you can get a little bit more leverage. And last but not least, I highly recommend that you get a torque wrench, a small one. This is a 1/4-inch drive. Just about every bolt on an e-bike, or a bike for that matter, has a torque requirement. Your stem bolts, your pinch bolts, even your kickstand bolts all have, believe it or not, a torque requirement. And this wrench really takes the guesswork out of that. You can easily over tighten bolts that you just don't need to. So I highly recommend you get a nice torque wrench. You don't have to spend a whole lot. Pro Bike Tool is a good brand. They're made by Shimano. And another one is Park Tool, which is probably the best, but they'll easily cost you probably twice as much as this set would. Okay, so you can see here that I have all of the components loose. This is the stock handlebar, the brake levers, the shifter, the grips. These are not the stock grips that came with this bike. These are Ergon GS ones. I absolutely love these grips. The ergonomic grips that came with it were great, but I have big hands and these grips just fit me a whole lot better. I do see on some of the reviews when people are trying to take their old grips off, they have trouble with these little end caps because the end caps are kind of a one-way plastic. They fit into the inside of the handlebars. And just an easy way to do this, because I've seen people use screwdrivers and sometimes you can mess up this plastic, is just to take the grip and just twist and pull out like this. The grip comes off and there's your end cap right there. If I can get it out. A lot of people also say, the end cap, I didn't like the grips. The end caps kept falling off. Well, usually what happens is people put these on and they don't put them on the handlebars far enough, because these are not designed to grab the inside of the grips. They're designed to grab the inside of the handlebar here. So just a little tip there. So anyway, I've got all the parts loose, and there's a couple of ways you can do this. I'm going to take this other grip off. One way you can do this, all of these parts can be, they kind of attach like a clamshell, I guess you could say. You could take them apart and lift them off, or you can slide them off the handlebar. Depending on how this replacement handlebar goes on, I may try to slide them off and then just slide them back on. That'll save me having to completely unscrew everything and then, put it all back together versus just sliding it on. That of course is the easy way to do it. So once I get the replacement handlebar on, which does have a bit of a rise, more so than this handlebar, as well as a back sweep. I'm going to check my wires. That's another concern. You have to be sure that you have enough, wire length. This is the headlight laying down here, by the way. But you with handlebars that go back a little further like this as well as up, you have to make sure you have enough length in these wires. Well, this is pretty crazy. So I just got the package with the replacement handlebars from Amazon, and they wrapped this handlebar in this yellow packing tape. They must have used half a roll of packing tape on these bars. I've never seen this before. Anyway, let me get these unwrapped and we'll proceed. All right, I've got the 4 face plate bolts here that hold the handlebar to the stem. 2 of them I've got off already. I'm about to take off the last 2. And again, handy. Once I put these back on, I'll show you another little neat trick I learned about when you're removing and reinstalling bolts like this. Okay, so I'm just going to let the handlebar hang down like that. I'm definitely mindful of where the display is right here. That's something else. If you're afraid, the display is going to hit something, because they do scratch easily because the face of the display is plastic. It's never a bad idea to wrap a baggie around it or even a piece of foam just to keep it protected. Okay, so I got lucky so far anyway. What I did was I had the components over here to the right, the underbar shifter as well as the brake lever. I slid those down the handlebar to the left to give me enough room to pull these wires to get the components off on this side. So I didn't have to take them completely off. So I'm hoping that I can do the same thing on this other side. But we're going to find out. So that's the old handlebar. We can put it down. And I think I'm gonna get lucky here. Hopefully get these components on. All right. And you definitely want to have them as loose as you can, because you can, if you still have them on here too tight, you can end up scratching the handlebars, which is never good. Now, as I'm looking here, I'm kind of judging where the handlebars are going to be. I should have enough wires, fortunately. Or wiring, I should say, enough length to my wiring. That's something you always have to be careful of when you're swapping out a handlebar that's shaped, All right, so now I am attaching the handlebar, the new handlebar on here. Of course, there's 4 bolts here. One thing I learned a long time ago, I used to fly radio-controlled electric airplanes. And when you're doing that, you're fiddling with a lot of tiny, tiny screws. And you don't want to cross-thread them. A gentleman who owned a hobby shop told me one time, and you guys may have heard of this, but he said, if you're ever wondering whether you have the threads engaged, and you're worried about cross-threading, if you will put the bolt in and turn it backwards until you hear a little click, you probably can't hear it on the camera, but when I'm turning this bolt backwards, there it is. That little click, when you're turning the bolt backwards, that tells you that the threads are engaged. And then you can start. Another tip I learned when you're replacing handlebars or just adjusting them, when you go to tighten these 4 bolts, you want to try to tighten them down about evenly, so that this little face plate kind of seats down on the handlebar evenly at all 4 points. Also, when you're tightening these bolts, you want to cross tighten them. So if you're tightening this bottom left one, the next one you want to tighten is the top right. And we're just snugging these up. We're eventually going to, in fact, I need to move it over a little bit. We're eventually going to use the torque wrench because these do need to be torqued down properly. Something else I learned, when you're putting these grips on and you're tightening these little screws, I don't know if you can see that, but this is a 3mm screw right here. And they only need to be snug. I've done this before where I over tighten the screw, and they're very soft metal, and you can strip that screw, and if you do, then you're in real trouble because the grip won't come off. And then what you'll have to do is take a drill bit and drill through that screw head because it's stripped, it's ruined. Just to get this grip off, you'll have to drill it out until the screw head is gone. And it's an absolute nightmare. So these grips only need to be tight enough to overcome you twisting them. That's all, which is not a lot. I think as a torque wrench goes, I want to say you tighten them to about 2 Newton meters of torque, not much. So if you're putting your grips back on and you want to know where your components go, I pretty much put mine right up against the grips. So if you can see, the brake levers are here, my shifter is here, and of course where you want your brake levers to go, that's a matter of personal preference. I like to have a little bit of down sweep in my brake levers, about like this. And then when the brake lever you would tighten first, and then the shifter mechanism actually swings up and it touches the underside of the brake lever, and that's when you tighten it. Now, when I showed you earlier that I had this magnetic screwdriver, here's where this comes into play. This, for some reason, is not an Allen head, it's a Torx, which is that star. A lot of people call them star nuts. But it's a Torx screw. Why Shimano did it that way, I don't know. Because everything else on this bike just about is either Phillips screws or more likely some kind of a metric Allen screw. By the way, just another little tip I'll show you. I didn't notice this until I got the handlebars adjusted where I want them, but there's a little bit of a mark right here where I guess the anodized finish came off. An easy old trick I learned, just take a black Sharpie and fill it in, and once it dries, it pretty much disappears. So there you go. All right, so now the final tightening, and I'll just do a couple of examples here. These pinch bolts, I call them, on the front of the stem that hold the handlebars in place, these 4 bolts need to be tightened to 6 Newton meters, and maybe one more turn right there. So just want to make sure that these are all tightened to spec. And of course I had it backwards. There we go. And again, what I like to do is I go to each bolt, and actually I'm going to have to move this headlight down for a second. There we go. And I go to each bolt, and again I'm cross tightening them. I just tightened this one, so now I'm going to tighten this one. And if you heard that click, that means I'm at the 6 Newton meters. So I will come back to this one. But now I want to tighten these. And again, I'm just trying to do it equally. There again, I heard the click, so that one's done. I'll go back to this one. There we go. And last but not least, this one. There we go. All right, so I didn't want to bore you guys with all the torquing I'm doing on this bike, but again, these faceplate bolts, I guess that's a faceplate, they are to be set to 6 Newton meters. And if you look in your bike's manual somewhere, especially a lot of e-bikes will have a little section. My wife's Electric Express, for instance, there's a whole section on each bolt and what it needs to be torqued to. These are 6 Newton meters, as I think I mentioned before. The brake levers are the same, 6 Newton meters, so I've already done those. And last but not least, probably one of the most important components on here when you're doing a swap like this, you may have noticed, but I moved this is a zoom adjustable 90-degree stem. I moved the stem almost all the way down so I could have better access and have a little more room with the wires. This needs to be adjusted to 16 Newton meters of torque, a lot of torque. And what I do is I'll take my 5mm wrench first and just tighten it. And by the way, when you're adjusting one of these, you'll feel these little detents in here. I like to get it where I think I want it, which is right about here. And let's see. Yeah, right about here. And you'll feel as you get it tighter, there's a little bit of play. I'll try to show you. Right about there. And the play slowly disappears, but you should feel just a little bit of clicking back and forth. That just means that the stem is in that notch where you want it. Okay? And you can snug it down pretty well here if you want. About like that. But then, whoops, I always come back with the torque wrench. Got my 5mm bit on here, and I have the torque wrench set to 16 Newton meters. And if I can get it in there, there we go. Right there. When it clicks, you're done. And then you don't have to worry about it, because the last thing you want is when you're riding this bike and the stem collapses because you didn't have it tight enough. So that's about it. I hope I didn't bore you too much with this swap. I think I'm absolutely going to love these handlebars. You can see I still have not a whole lot of play in these wires, but I do have enough. This is a pretty unique bike in that one of the features I love about it is the handlebars, where the head tube is, this piece here, the cables disappear down into the head tube, and you don't really see them anymore until they come out just underneath where the crank arms are. That's kind of a U-free thing. Not to pitch U-free, but I love this bike. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope you learned something. If you found this video useful, you can post down in the comments, or if you have any questions, please give me a like and subscribe if you like. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.